Maybe I'm crazy, but when your own mother-in-law looks your children in the eyes and says, "I'm your real mom," what are you supposed to do? Smile, laugh it off, or finally realize you've been living with a wolf dressed as family? That day, something inside me snapped, and trust me, I'm not proud of what I did next, but I don't regret it either. Because sometimes, protecting your family means becoming the villain in someone else's story. This is the story of how I went from being the too nice daughter-in-law to the woman who packed her mother-in-law's bags, changed the locks, and finally, took her home back. Before we start, hit that like button and subscribe, because you won't believe how far this went. Let's just say, the truth didn't end at the front door. It all started a few years ago when I thought I had it all figured out. A loving husband, 2 adorable kids, and a home that finally felt safe. My mother-in-law, Linda, lived just 20 minutes away, which at first I thought was a blessing. She was warm, overly generous, and always eager to help. The kind of woman who would show up with groceries even when you didn't ask. I used to think she just cared too much, but I learned fast. Linda didn't help. She took over. At first, it was little things. She'd drop by unannounced, claiming she was just in the neighborhood. She'd fold my laundry, reorganize my pantry, or change the kids' bedtime routine because her way made more sense. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. She meant well, right? I didn't want to sound ungrateful, and my husband, Jason, always said, "She's just being mom. That's how she shows love." Maybe. But love doesn't feel like losing control of your own home. Linda had this way of making me feel invisible. When guests came over, she'd tell stories about Jason's childhood, talk about what she taught him about discipline, about responsibility, about life. She'd smile at me like I should thank her for raising such a good man. I stayed quiet, the polite daughter-in-law everyone expects you to be. But the more I stayed quiet, the smaller I started to feel. Things got worse after our second child was born. I was exhausted, postpartum tired, the kind where even your bones ache. Linda practically moved in to help. Except her version of help meant deciding what the baby wore, how often she napped, and what I fed her. If I said no, she'd sigh and say, "I raised Jason just fine. You can trust me." And Jason, he didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. He said I was overthinking. "She just loves the kids," he told me one night, half asleep while I sat up staring at the baby monitor, listening to Linda's footsteps in the hallway. Then there were the comments. The kind that sound harmless until you catch the tone. She'd say things like, "Oh, she calls you mommy? How sweet." Or, "You're lucky the kids like you so much," like she was auditioning for a role that was already taken. I tried to laugh it off. I tried to stay civil, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. The boundaries were gone and my peace was slipping away, one small comment at a time. And then came the day she crossed the line I could never uncross. It started with whispers, little things that didn't make sense at first. My son, Ethan, began repeating phrases I'd never said. One morning, as I was brushing his hair for school, he looked at me with those curious brown eyes and asked, "Mommy, did Grandma make me too?" I froze. "Make you?" I asked, trying to sound calm. He nodded. "Grandma said she's my real mom because she made Daddy, and Daddy made me." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. My stomach twisted as I hugged him, forcing a smile. But deep down, something cold settled inside me. Linda wasn't just crossing lines anymore. She was erasing them. That night, when I told Jason what Ethan said, he chuckled. "You're taking it too seriously," he said. "Mom jokes like that all the time." "Jokes?" I whispered. "Jason, she's confusing our kids!" He sighed, rubbed his temples, and muttered, "She means no harm. Don't start another argument, okay? Another argument." That's what it had become. Me versus his mother, while he stood somewhere in the middle, blindfolded by loyalty. The next few weeks were worse. Linda began showing up every morning before school, saying she wanted to help get the kids ready. She'd fix their breakfast, brush their hair, even scold me for being too soft. Once, I walked into the living room to find her showing them old family albums, pictures of Jason as a baby, and saying, "See, you have my eyes. Not your mom's, my eyes." I wanted to scream, but instead I took a breath, smiled tightly, and said, "Linda, I appreciate the help, but I've got it." She smiled back, that sugary sweet smile that hides poison underneath, and said, "I'm just doing what any real mom would do." I remember that moment vividly. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear her words. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I wanted her out, but I knew if I lost control, Jason would only see me as the problem again, so I played it smart. I started paying attention, recording small things in my phone notes. Times she came over, things she said, the way the kids reacted. I noticed they were pulling away from me, clinging to her instead. She'd bribe them with candy, whisper secrets, and say things like, "Mommy gets tired easily, but Grandma's always here." I started losing sleep. Every sound at night made me sit up. Was she sneaking into the kids' room again? Once, I caught her standing by their beds, humming softly, her hand brushing my daughter's hair. She looked at me like I was the intruder. When I told Jason, he just said, "She's trying to help you rest." Rest? How can you rest when someone's slowly rewriting your role as a mother? The tension at home became unbearable. Meals turned cold, conversations shorter. I felt like a guest in my own home, walking on glass, waiting for the next crack. Then came the birthday party, the day that changed everything. We threw a small gathering for Ethan's 7th birthday. Balloons, cake, laughter. It felt normal for a while. Until Linda stood up for her little toast. She smiled at Ethan and said, "You're growing so fast, sweetheart. You make Grandma so proud. You know, I'm the one who really loves you like a mother should." Everyone laughed awkwardly, thinking it was another one of her jokes. But I saw Ethan's confused face. I saw her eyes, the pride, the ownership. That night, when everyone left, I found my daughter sitting in her room, clutching her stuffed toy. She looked at me and asked, "Mommy, if Grandma's our real mom, then who are you?" That broke me. Completely. I walked to the living room and just stood there in the dark, the glow of the nightlight flickering against the walls. I could hear Linda's voice in my head, her soft, controlling tone weaving through every memory. That's when I knew. This wasn't love. This was control dressed up as affection, and I had to stop it before my kids forgot who their real mother was. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning. The kind of day that should have been peaceful, with pancakes on the stove and cartoons in the background. But that morning the house felt off. Too quiet. No clinking dishes, no kids running around. Just silence that pressed against the walls like it was holding a secret. I called for the kids. No answer. Then I heard it, soft voices coming from the guest room. The door was slightly open, and I could see a bit of movement through the crack. I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. Inside, Linda was sitting on the edge of the bed with my 2 kids beside her. She was brushing my daughter's hair, her voice low, almost whispering. "I'm your real mom," she said softly. "Your other mom, she just takes care of you because I let her. But don't tell her, okay? It'll hurt her feelings." I froze. My blood turned cold. My throat tightened. But I couldn't make a sound. My daughter nodded slowly, confused and scared, and my son just stared at her, wide-eyed, trying to understand. That moment, it was like watching someone steal my soul in front of me. I pushed the door open. "What did you just say?" Linda looked up, startled for a split second, then smiled. That same fake, calm smile she always used when she wanted to look innocent. "Oh, sweetie, I was just telling them how much I love them." "Don't twist it. Don't twist it," I repeated, my voice shaking. "You just told my children you're their real mother." She stood up slowly, still composed. "You're overreacting again. You always take things the wrong way." The kids were frozen, watching us, their little faces full of confusion. I wanted to scream, cry, break something, but I couldn't, not in front of them. So I told them to go to their rooms. When the door closed, I turned to her and said, "You've gone too far, Linda." She tilted her head like I was being dramatic. "I'm just doing what's best for them. They need a mother who actually knows what she's doing." That was it. The calm inside me snapped like glass. "Get out," I said quietly. She laughed. "You're not throwing me out of my son's house. My son's house. Not mine, not ours, his. That's how she saw it. That's how she always saw it." Jason came home a few minutes later, walking into the tension like it was smoke. I told him what happened. I expected shock, anger, something. Instead, he just stared at the floor. "Mom, did you really say that?" Linda put her hand on her chest and said, "Oh, Jason, she's exaggerating again. You know how sensitive she gets." He sighed. "Can we all just calm down? Calm down?" My entire world was cracking open and he wanted calm. I looked at him, the man who promised to protect me, who couldn't even see the war happening in his own home. So I stopped expecting him to. I realized right then I was on my own. Linda smirked, like she'd won. She walked past me toward the kitchen and said, "You'll thank me someday, dear. Kids always find out who the real mother figure is." I stood there shaking. The anger wasn't wild anymore. It was cold, steady, focused. I watched her pour herself a glass of juice like nothing happened, and I thought, no, not anymore. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat in the living room staring at the front door. Every sound in the house made me flinch. I could still hear her whispering in my kids' ears. I could still see Jason's blank face, so I opened my phone and I started making plans. Quietly, carefully. I didn't tell anyone. I just knew what I had to do. Because when someone tries to take your place as a mother, you don't argue. You act. And the next morning, I finally did. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, the glow from the hallway nightlight tracing the edges of my thoughts. Every word Linda had said kept replaying in my head. "I'm your real mom." Kids always find out who the real mother figure is. The more I thought about it, the calmer I became. It wasn't rage anymore. It was clarity. For the first time, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. The house was still, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I walked quietly into the guest room, her room, and looked around. Her suitcase was under the bed, still half-packed from her last visit. I pulled it out and placed it on the floor. My hands didn't shake. My breathing was steady. Then I began folding her clothes. Every shirt, every scarf, every piece of her that had invaded my space. Each fold felt like a small piece of control returning to me. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because my peace was worth protecting. By the time she came downstairs, coffee in hand, I was waiting for her. The suitcase sat near the door like a silent statement. She looked at it, then at me. "What's this?" "It's time for you to go, Linda." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me?" I kept my voice even. "You crossed the line. You told my children you're their real mother. You made them question who they can trust. I won't let that happen again." She laughed, sharp and cruel. "You're being ridiculous. You don't get to tell me what to do in my son's house." I stepped closer. Actually, I do. Because this is our home, and you stopped being welcome in it the moment you decided to steal my children's trust. Her expression changed. The smugness cracked, revealing something colder underneath. Jason won't agree to this, she said. I don't care, I replied quietly. He can choose how he feels later. But right now, you're leaving. She stared at me, waiting for me to back down, like I always did. But I didn't. Not this time. Then, just as expected, Jason walked in. He froze when he saw the suitcase. What's going on? Linda moved fast, rushing toward him with her wounded expression. She's throwing me out, Jason. After everything I've done for you and these kids, she's throwing me out. Jason looked at me, confused. Babe, what's happening? I took a deep breath. What's happening is that your mother told our children she's their real mom. She's been manipulating them for weeks, and you've been ignoring every warning sign. Linda gasped dramatically. That's not true! But before Jason could say anything, Ethan appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Daddy, he said softly. Grandma said she made you, and that means she made us too. Is that true? Silence, heavy and unshakable. Jason looked at Ethan, then at his mother. Mom, he said slowly. Did you really say that? For a moment she tried to deny it, but something in her son's eyes, disappointment, maybe shame, made her falter. I was just joking, she stammered. Jason's jaw tightened. Pack your things, Mom. She turned pale. You're choosing her over me? He looked at her, voice low but steady. No, Mom. I'm choosing what's right for my kids. She tried to protest, to cry, to guilt-trip him the way she always did. But this time, the power she held over him was gone. As Jason helped carry her bags to the car, she turned to me one last time and said, You'll regret this. I met her eyes. No, I'll finally sleep tonight. The door shut behind her with a soft, satisfying click. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I changed the locks. I watched as Jason stood beside me, quiet but supportive. For once, he didn't argue. He didn't defend her. He just placed a hand on my shoulder and said, You did what I should have done a long time ago. I nodded. My heart felt lighter, but the house still carried her shadow, like an echo of everything she'd tried to take from me. But that was okay. Because she could have her lies, her manipulations, her control. What she couldn't have anymore was us. The days after she left were eerily quiet. No footsteps echoing down the hallway at dawn. No unsolicited advice. No tension humming in the air. Just silence. Pure, peaceful silence. It felt strange at first, like the house itself was taking a breath for the first time in years. The kids asked about her, of course. Ethan wanted to know why Grandma wasn't coming over anymore. My daughter Lily asked if she'd done something wrong. I knelt beside them and said gently, No, sweetheart. Grown-ups just need space sometimes, but I'm your mom, and that will never change. They seemed to accept that, at least for now. But I could see the confusion lingering in their eyes, like a fog that hadn't quite lifted. Jason, on the other hand, barely spoke for the first few days. He kept busy, fixing things that didn't need fixing, mowing the lawn twice. I think he was processing the fact that his mother wasn't the saint he'd always believed she was. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch him sitting on the couch, staring at the empty spot where she used to sit. I didn't interrupt. Some realizations you have to face alone. A week later, a letter came in the mail, from her. No apology, no accountability, just a neatly folded note that said, I hope someday you understand why I did what I did. I only wanted to protect them. I read it once and tucked it away in a drawer I rarely open. Some things don't deserve a response, but the peace that followed. That was real. The kids started smiling more, laughing louder. The house felt lighter, warmer, alive again. Even Jason began to come around, One night, while we were putting the kids to bed, he whispered, "You were right." I didn't say anything. I just squeezed his hand. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel guilt sometimes. There are moments, small ones, when I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember that look in my children's eyes, the confusion she caused, the way she tried to rewrite who I was in their hearts, and that guilt fades into something stronger. Certainty. Sometimes protecting your family doesn't look gentle or graceful. Sometimes it's messy, painful, and ugly, but it's still protection. Now, when I pass by the front door and see the new locks, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Safety. Real, quiet safety. And maybe one day when my kids are old enough to understand, I'll tell them the whole story, not out of anger, but as a lesson. Because love without boundaries isn't love at all, it's control, and I learned that the hard way. It's strange how peace feels when you've been living in chaos for so long. At first it feels wrong, too quiet, too still, but after a while, that silence becomes comfort. It becomes proof that you finally did something right, even if it broke you a little to do it. It's been months since that day. The locks have been changed, the rooms redecorated, and every trace of her has slowly faded from the house. But what hasn't faded is what it taught me. I used to believe keeping a family together meant tolerating everything, biting my tongue, smiling through the disrespect, keeping the peace no matter the cost. But now I know better. Peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. For years I let her rewrite the rules in my own home. I told myself it was easier not to fight, that I didn't want to cause tension. But the truth is, I was afraid of being seen as cruel, afraid of being the villain. Until I realized something powerful. Villains are only villains in someone else's version of the story. And in hers, I'd always be the bad guy. So, I stopped trying to fix her image of me and started protecting my reality instead. Jason and I are stronger now. It wasn't easy. We had long nights, hard conversations, and moments where we questioned everything. But in the end, he saw what I saw. That love without boundaries isn't love, it's ownership. And no one has the right to own another person's home, marriage, or motherhood. The kids are happier too. They laugh louder, sleep better, and the confusion in their eyes has been replaced with something I almost lost. Trust. They know I'm their mom, not because I said it louder, but because I stood up for it. Sometimes I still think about Linda. I wonder if she ever realizes what she lost. Maybe she tells herself I pushed her away, or that I poisoned her son against her. Let her think that. I've stopped needing her to understand. I've stopped needing her approval, because what matters now is simple. My children feel safe, my home feels whole, and I finally feel like myself again. Maybe that's the lesson in all of this. Sometimes protecting your family means breaking your own heart first. Sometimes you have to be the storm before the calm, and if that makes me the villain in her story, so be it, because in mine, I'm finally the hero.